Hi everyone. Welcome to the TREPAS webinar. Thank you all for coming. I'm David Levy, the Chief Marketing Officer for TREPAS and your host for today. During today's webinar, you'll all be in listen-only mode. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the call. If you have a question during the presentation, submit it through the Q&A panel. If you're in full screen view, click on the question mark icon and you'll see the Q&A panel. If you're in split screen mode, you'll see the dialog box on the right side and you can send a question through there. As a reminder, this presentation is being recorded, and if you're experiencing any technical issues, please contact WebEx Technical Support at 1-866-779-3239. If you have any other questions, send it to us through the Q&A panel, and we will do our best to answer them. On our call today, our presenter is Larry Gorkin, the Managing Director for Corporate Solutions for TREPAS. Over his career, Larry has learned what it takes to help companies grow, and he helps our customers do just that. His line executive experience includes stints at Procter & Gamble, MCI, and GE Capital. As a consultant at McKinsey & Company and at Stonebridge Consulting Group, Larry has guided clients such as IBM, MasterCard Worldwide, and Baxter Healthcare. So without any further ado, let me turn it over to Larry.
Thank you, David, and welcome everyone. As you know, today's webinar is all about helping companies close more sales and close them faster. Under that umbrella, our discussion has three parts. First, we'll cover the main reason most sales don't close and why others take too long. Next, we'll explain the one essential selling approach that can improve your success. And finally, we'll outline specific steps you can take to get started immediately. Included, we'll briefly tell you about TREPAS and how we can help you achieve better sales success. Needless to say, if you're on this webinar, improved sales close rates must be important to you or your company. That said, it would be helpful for us to get a better sense of how big an issue this is at your firm. So, we'd like to do a quick survey of the audience which asks, how satisfied is your company with its current sales close rates? As you can see on the screen, we've provided three possible answers. First, closing is not a big issue. We have good close rates and timing, but always want to improve. Second choice, close rates and timing are not awful, but there's lots of upside. We'd all like them to be better. Finally, we have a big issue with close rates and timing. There's a serious need to improve. We'll give you a minute to enter your choices and then share the results.
Great.
What do we got here, David?
All right, let's give a couple people more chance. Their results are coming in. All right, it looks pretty good distribution here. Interestingly, it looks like about 45% of attendees say that they actually have a big issue with close rates, so C. And the rest are almost evenly divided among A and B, where closing is somewhat of an issue versus closing is not a big issue. So it's clearly resonating with our audience, Larry.
Well, that's a good reference for this discussion, David. With those results, I'm sure everyone will get some value from today. So let's get started with an astonishing fact. 82% of qualified sales opportunities fail to close. That's an average we've calculated based on a range of estimates we've found reported on the web. The most optimistic data we saw was a 29% close rate reported by the research firm Aberdeen Group. Most pessimistic was a 6% rate reported by Implicit, the CRM software company. Whether you take the optimistic or the pessimistic view, they're both alarming from my perspective, given the millions of dollars companies spend to nurture and develop leads. That doesn't even begin to measure the huge work and time invested by individual reps and teams to make it happen. Equally disappointing at a personal level, is that 50% of reps won't even meet their personal sales target.
So 50%, half of all the salespeople on the call, half of them are not going to meet their next sales target.
1 out of every 2. It's kind of a daunting number. That said, it's important to remember, David, that this is more than just scorekeeping. There are real costs to low close rates. Most important, when sales don't close, companies miss their plan or simply underachieve. The result is a negative impact on things like inventory, capital spending, competitive position, and stock value. Even more to the point, there's a real human cost. Hiring is reduced, jobs get cut, salaries and bonuses are reduced, and people sometimes even lose their jobs. Net, there are some pretty compelling reasons for everybody to do a better job at closing. But before we can do that, we first need to really know why sales don't close. And surprisingly, the answer is straightforward and deceptively simple. Sales don't close because customers lack the conviction and confidence that they'll get the value needed to go ahead and make that actual buy decision. Right? Customers lack the conviction that they'll get the value they need to make a buying decision. So to put some more meat behind that conclusion, we'll draw upon research published by Steve W. Martin. He's a recognized expert in sales effectiveness and a professor at the USC Marshall School of Business. Based on thousands of interviews with B2B salespeople and customers, Professor Martin says the #1 reason that sales fail to close is buyers simply don't make a decision. Here's a key quote from Martin's Harvard Business Review article entitled, "Study Reveals Why Salespeople Lose." He says, "The real enemy of salespeople today isn't their arch rivals. It's no decision."
It's almost the company itself.
They just don't go forward.
Interesting. Very interesting, Larry.
Yeah, and so we've identified 3 main reasons for no decision. First, Martin explains that customers face a great deal of what he calls fear, uncertainty, and doubt in making these buying decisions. They've got a bunch of worries. They start out with worrying about money. Are the funds available, and is the investment justified? They take stewardship very seriously. They wonder, is the purchase in the company's best interest? They think a great deal about their peers. They say, how will my colleagues perceive the decision on this purchase? Choice. They wonder about whether or not the choice between competitors is clear and obvious. And finally, they wonder about the information they're dealing with, whether or not the facts they're being presented are truthful and accurate.
That's really interesting, Larry, because if I look at what you just said, only one of the concerns that buyers have, which I guess would be the choice, has to do with the actual product itself. How does my product compare to others? Everything else has got some sort of political or emotional content associated with it.
It's really very emotionally laden. It's really about self-esteem. It's about confidence, about how people are going to see them as they go ahead and do this. So with that foundation, the second reason relates to the entire selling process that kind of is in response to this, to the set of fear and uncertainty and in doubt. And it's very common in today's world. So to reduce these stressors, customers issue lengthy RFPs, they hire expert consultants, they conduct extensive product evaluations, and yet at the end, many still lack certainty about whether to buy, and if so, which product. And in many organizations, there's always someone raising concerns. As a result, most customers simply make no decision at all. And when I look at this, I kind of see what I would call a very reactive and one-dimensional selling process. The whole notion of customers issuing RFPs and vendors responding. many reps and companies engage customers in a needs assessment, but it generally ends there. Once recommendations and proposals are made, things move into a Q&A pattern. Buyers ask a question, reps respond.
So this whole RFP process that we're familiar with and everyone on the phone is familiar with is a way to address that fear, uncertainty, and doubt in those components you described in the morning, in the previous slide.
Yeah, it's a reaction to it, but it also turns the whole process into a shallow one where the ability of the rep to really sell and interact with the customer is undermined. So, but there's a third reason, and the third reason is that the business case supporting the deal just doesn't work. When I say that, what I mean to say is the entire business case process really is a low value contributing exercise. Vendors come in and present their best fact-based case, but it's frequently a black box, and there's limited interaction around the assumptions and the actual elements of the model. The result is that customers consistently discount the credibility and validity of the business case, further eroding the chance for a successful close.
That's really interesting, Larry, because companies engage in an ROI exercise to actually increase their credibility by showing the client, the customer, that they've thought about their business and they're putting some metrics or some data behind it. So you're saying that doesn't work?
Well, in fact, the intent is right, but the way it's presented, the interaction around it, just means that it doesn't achieve the goal, right? It's a black box, it's non-interactive, and at the end, customers discount the value of what's being presented to them.
Because I'm always going to show an ROI that works, right?
Everybody does. Why would, if you couldn't do that, you wouldn't show up at the game.
Got it.
So it's clear that what salespeople need to do is build customer conviction and confidence. And the question becomes how. What we would argue is that to improve close rates, firms need to increase their customer engagement. And we see that the critical spot to do that is to engage customers in a different type of discussion around the business case, very different than what they're doing today. Which we said, this is really the low value contributing exercise which does little to advance the opportunity to close. And what we're suggesting is rather than present the business case as a static set of assertions, we recommend engaging in a highly interactive discussion with customers. More specifically, what firms need to do is to open their ROI models to discussion, allowing customers to propose their own set of assumptions. The purpose is to engage them in a real-time exploration of alternative scenarios and to define ones that they are ultimately comfortable with. And unless your proposition is wildly ill-suited, the end result will still undoubtedly support a buying decision.
So you actually want to invite your customers to challenge your own business case.
I want them to understand it. I want them to understand what the elements of the model are. I want them to challenge and create their own assumptions. And here's the important point, right? The important point is that when you have an open and interactive process, you change the entire discussion. Instead of discussing, is there value, the discussion becomes, how much value? Customers build conviction because the business case and assumptions are theirs, giving them greater confidence to make the buy decision or recommendation. Viewed this way, the business case really becomes a tool that helps customers sell themselves. The same open, engaging process transforms their perception of the rep from a hungry vendor to a trusted partner. And by the way, this whole open interactive process gives companies and their reps an additional side benefit, which is reps using this approach say they now have a much greater understanding and appreciation of the financial value their products create for customers, which helps their overall selling effectiveness.
So they're not just building some ROI calculator model. They actually have to dig into the customer's business to understand it, where their value is delivered, before they even go in and talk to the customer.
Well, they really first need to understand where they're going to create value for themselves. What is the value elements that the customer will gain from using their product? So they first have to really crystallize how it is that they're going to contribute to their customer's bottom line, and then understand the dynamics at the company and how they're going to use it so that they can see exactly how it will be, create that value. And then finally, engaging customers so that the assumptions are ones that they understand and buy into. So with that context, let me explain that it's really very easy to adopt and execute this approach. There are only a few key steps. The first is to develop a standard business case ROI model for each of your offerings. Right? If the finance team keeps the keys, you have to work with them. The model should crystallize, as I said, the sources of value your product provides. Then, of course, what you want to do is prepare the business case for each customer as needed. What you want to do here is include reasonable assumptions that you can explain and support. Second, present the business case to your customer, clearly outlining the model elements and the assumptions. Finally, what you want to do here, and this is the most important part, is to engage clients to propose alternative assumptions where they find yours questionable. Explore the full range of scenarios until the team reaches some level of alignment. Take it one step further and actually hand the model over to your customers and encourage them to use it for internal selling and alignment. It's deceptively simple, yet incredibly effective. So at this point, you might expect that Trefis has the capability to help somewhat in this endeavor. And in fact, Trefis helps facilitate the entire process so it's easy and engaging for all parties. Let me explain this briefly and then show you a real live example. As a reminder, Trefis offers software that automatically transforms any model into an interactive, visual interactive format where users can create and compare alternative scenarios in real time. In a selling use case like we've been discussing, Trefis transforms the vendor's business case model into this interactive format. Reps show the Trefis-enabled model in customer meetings and engages participants to test alternative assumptions in real time. What I'm going to do now is show you an example using one of the models that we use at Trefis.
I'll make you presenter here, Larry.
All right.
Let me know when you're ready.
I'll let you know when I'm ready. And in fact, I am ready. And so what I'm going to do is share my screen.
Let's wait and see if that, okay, I can see, hold on. Yep, I can see your screen now.
Excellent. And so what you're looking at right here, this is the model, the ROI model that Trefis uses in selling its business planning and forecasting solution. Customers use this essentially to, the benefit is that customers can use Trefis to help improve the accuracy of their business plans and achieve greater forecast accuracy. And what you see here is with that, what Trefis does is you're looking at the overall business model, and on the left-hand side you see that the business case we're proposing for this customer is that Trefis will generate $14 million worth of value and an astronomically high ROI. And we do this based on 4 elements of value that we're going to create. So Trefis, you see in the green arms, there's going to increase profitability, improve compensation, planning efficiency, and save management time. And in the red arm here you see are the costs that customers will incur in this particular case for licensing Treffus.
So it looks like, Larry, here what we're saying is that based on the size of the arms, the maximum value is coming from profit, then compensation, planning and efficiency, then management time savings.
Exactly. And what we can do now, we're going to show the clients, our customers, literally how our model is built. And so when we open up profit, we see that our model is built on a starting case of what the customer revenue is, in this case $5 billion, right? You can see that right here. We apply the company's net profit margin, and since both of those are givens from the client itself, from the customer, we can next go and we see that we've applied a factor of what percent the company might miss their forecast by, and what improvement, finally, Treffus might provide.
Can you scroll down a little bit, Larry, so
Sure.
we can see how that works? Okay. Great.
There we go.
Okay.
That's a good idea. And so we've assumed in our forecast, in our model that we've projected, brought into this customer, that the client is going to miss their forecast by about 10% on average.
So if at this moment in time, I'm the client and I say, I don't know if you're going to reach $14.3 million. I want to challenge your assumptions. How would I be able to do that?
So right here, in fact, this would be a place where customer might say, well, in fact, you've assumed that we're going to miss our forecast by 10%, but in fact, our average over the past 5 years has been somewhere around 7%. And so what we can do in real time in the meeting is we can drag this down, and we can say, okay, well, what would the business case be, in fact, if we achieved 7%? And so we'll drag this down to 7%. And as we do that, you can see that our business case is updated. And in bringing this down from our assumption of 10% to 7%, we've knocked about $3 million off of the forecast, off of the business case. And so instead of assuming that $14 million of value would be created, in fact, we've knocked 20% out of that, or it's down now to $11 million. Similarly, we can go to the next element in the model, and we've assumed or asserted that Treffus can improve their performance by 20%. And the client might say, well, that's awfully aggressive on your part. We don't think you're going to get anywhere near that, or we'd rather not assume that, even if you could. In fact, what would happen if we achieved only, say, a 15% assumption? Once again, in real time, what we can do is we can drag this down to about 15%, right? And in fact, in my case, I brought it down a little further to about 14%. And as we've done that, we've brought the business case down to $9 million rather than the original $14 million, bringing it down by 35%. We can go through the entire model doing this, and in fact, we can create this and we can save this. We can create and save this and call this the customer business case, right? And so we call this the customer case, and we can save this. We can go through the entire model, which we won't do today, and save any number of scenarios, any number of alternate assumptions. We can raise some higher and some lower. Regardless, we can create this. We can create another negative scenario. We can create an upside scenario.
So you can keep clicking on these arms and uncovering the assumptions and playing kind of what-if scenarios to your heart's delight.
Exactly. And so, so that's kind of how Treffus can create an interactive experience for the customers. The main point here is to show the value of engaging customers in a real-time exercise where they can test and assert their own assumptions about your product's contribution. When customers put their own assumptions into a business case, they build conviction, and that's how you close more sales. So in a moment, we'll open the floor for questions, But first, what we'll do is summarize a few key points and suggested next steps. Here are the key points. First, customers don't buy because they lack conviction. Most companies don't lose to a competitor, they lose to no decision. Second, to gain greater conviction, you need to increase customer conviction in the sales process and specifically around the business case. Finally, the best way to build business case engagement is to open your model to customers and invite them to test their own assumptions in real time. There are only a few key steps to get started. First, build a standard business case model for your key products. Engage your finance folks as necessary. Second, present it to customers in a format that is open and invites collaboration and input. Finally, engage customers in real time to assert and test their own assumptions. Before we take questions, let me add a few more items. First, we're going to make today's slides available to participants. If you're interested, just drop Dave a note.
Here's my email address if you need to.
Second, if you're interested in more information about Trefis overall, the sales use case, or want to see a full demo, again, just drop Dave a note. We can also send you a real client case study for this. Finally, as a special offer for participants in this event today, Trefis will transform your ROI sales model into this interactive format that we just showed you at no charge. If you have an existing business case model, it's a great way to see how Trefis adds value firsthand. And with that, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. And David, I'm going to let you be the guy who sees what we get here. Give folks a few minutes to enter their questions and see what we come up with.
Well, we've got a couple already, Larry. No need to wait. So the first one is, I understand the logic of what you presented, but isn't there a risk in asking customers to test their own assumptions? Seems like there's a concern about control there. Who's in charge of the information?
I'm not quite sure what the question means by risk, but if you mean that customers assert assumptions that couldn't customers assert assumptions that kill the business case? If that's the question, I guess that could happen. But if it does, it's probably going to happen anyway. And if your business case can't support reasonable assumptions from the customers, it's unlikely you're going to make the sale in any event. Moreover, I'd personally much rather be in the room for these discussions, acting as a counterweight to some potentially over-negative input.
So rather than in that kind of one-way reactive process, the RFP process that you described where a client is reading some static information and says, this isn't going to work. Instead, you actually want to be in the room where if they make that conclusion, you can say, wait, hold up. Let's take a look at the model and let's play around with the assumptions.
Exactly. And if they're not buying your assumptions and they're going to kill it anyway, and because your model doesn't hold up, it's going to happen. And so the whole process encourages vendors to come in with reasonable models that are clear and defendable. But more important, I'd much rather be, as you said, I want to be in the room. I want to be in the room while people are discussing the business case, and I'd rather be interacting with them around the assumptions that they're going to use.
Okay. Great. Let's take a look. Got another question here. It says, clearly Trefis is selling software, and I can see how you can really add value to this discussion. But is there a way to do all of this without Trefis?
Well, in fact, the questioner is right on both premises. We are selling software, and yes, Trefis adds tremendous value to these business case discussions. And in fact, we'd be glad to show you the business case for our business case solution. That said, you don't really need to use Trefis per se. The key point is to have the interactive discussion with customers. If you didn't have Trefis, you could project an Excel model on the screen, enter different values into individual cells. That might be less elegant, but certainly you'd achieve the same impact.
So that's a lot of that, what you just said, is almost about having the courage in your own convictions to share it with the client. The mechanism, obviously we'd rather you use Treppis, but the key thing is you have to be willing to open yourself up to your client so they can challenge your assumptions.
I think that's exactly right. The whole purpose, the whole point is engage your clients, all right? Let them get their fears and uncertainties out on the table. Let them put their own assumptions about how they're viewing your business case right out there. And once you know them, you can address their fears. And you can also get them feeling ownership in what the business case is. It's all about ownership that builds conviction.
Okay. Got a couple more questions here. Next one. You said something about clients using the business case for internal selling. Can you expand upon that?
Well, sure. So without being redundant, the key point here is to give customers conviction to buy or recommend buying. And my perspective is once you've achieved that goal, why not give them the same tools to make or defend their decision, their choice? In the case of Treppis, we actually provide customers a link to the model and encourage them to use it with their internal stakeholders. The same process that built conviction for your team can be repeated inside the company.
All right, we've got one more question, Larry. It looks like it's come in. Question is very simple. Has a client ever challenged your assumptions in a way, or can they challenge your assumptions in a way that they actually tell you that you're being too conservative in your case?
In fact, what customers do when we've presented our model is our models at Treppis is sometimes customers say individual assumptions are too low, and sometimes they say, gee, in fact, this assumption is too high. We see it both ways, and you know, I think the first go that people have is to try and dial your assumptions down. But as people start engaging in the process, you find people saying, well, you know, maybe this one could be better. And in fact, you engage people in that whole process. So the whole notion of interacting and becoming an honest broker is
right.
Really what drives folks to engage in the process, and at the end of the day, build the conviction that is necessary to close the sale.
And when you do that, earlier we talked about becoming a trusted partner versus just being someone who's trying to sell you something. So it seems like if you're engaging your customers in that kind of open dialogue, you're building trust in a way that you can't do through the RFP process or other ways.
Absolutely, David. Absolutely. And the last point I think we spoke about earlier is we find our customers tell us that their own reps have a much greater appreciation for the value they're bringing, and they can bring deeper conviction of their own to the table.
Interesting. Okay. Well, Larry, that's about all we have for today. I want to thank everyone for participating, and we'll follow up as we promised. We'll send a link to this recording. We'll make the materials available, and as we said, we'll send out a case study to everyone who participated. And we'll also reiterate the offer that we made, that if you are interested in having us transform one of your business case models using the Treppis interactive experience in our platform, just reach out to either Larry or myself, and we'll be happy to do that for you at no charge. In the meantime, happy selling. Anything from you, Larry, to close?
Close more. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.